Nani mwalele po vugenjani vanave Africa. Happy, wholesome, winning and willpower Wednesday. My name is Aina Raiza Koyo alongside Ashwin Berry, and we are here to broadcast the news making headlines across Africa.
Absolutely, and today is Pharmacist Day. Pharmacist Day implores us to take a moment to think of all the people that work as pharmacists. These dedicated folks help us feel better and only ever see us at our worst. Take a moment to visit a pharmacy with a smile on your face and a healthy bounce to your step. We'll definitely make sure that surprises them. Of course, tell them you're smiling because you might have a mask on, especially in the pharmacy. But here's a video on Pharmacist Day.
Mali's junta leader says open to dialogue after sanctions. Mali's strongman leader Assimi Goïta said on Monday Bakamo remained open to dialogue after West African bloc ECOWAS imposed stringent sanctions on the troubled Sahel country over delayed elections. Even if we regret the illegitimate, illegal and inhumane nature of certain decisions, Mali remains open to dialogue with the economic community of West African states to find a consensus, Goïta said on state TV. Goïta did not detail how his regime would respond to the stringent sanctions. The coordinated action against Mali followed a proposal by its army-dominated government last month to stay in power for up to 5 years before staging elections, despite international demands that it respects a promise to hold election in February. After an early wave of sanctions from ECOWAS following the 2020 coup, Goïta had promised to restore civilian rule in February 2022 presidential and legislative elections.
In our second story, UN holds talks with Sudan's rival factions. The United Nations on Monday began meetings with Sudanese groups to find a way out of the political deadlock that has paralyzed the country since an October military coup. UN envoy for Sudan, Volker Perthes, told a news conference in the capital, Khartoum, that consultations will first aim to build confidence between the military and the pro-democracy movement before they possibly engage in direct talks. The turmoil in Sudan has intensified with the resignation of embattled Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok last week following the failure to reach a compromise between the military and the pro-democracy movement. Perthes said the consultations that began on Monday could eventually result in a consensus that would help find a compromise to ease the grinding stalemate. The SPA announced its rejection of talks on Sunday, saying the only way out of the ongoing crisis is through the removal of the generals from power. In a statement, the ruling Sovereign Council welcomed the UN initiative to facilitate talks among Sudanese players and called on the African Union to support and contribute to the efforts.
In Ethiopia, footage strike emerges. On Monday, footage released by Ethiopian regional state-owned television station showed the impact of an airstrike in embattled Tigray region. Images of the strike that hit on Saturday a refugee camp in Dedibed, a town located in northwestern Tigray, killed dozens of civilians on Saturday, have been broadcasted. Tigray TV, an Ethiopian regional state-owned television station, released the footage on Monday. The exact death toll of the strike has yet to be announced, but dozens of people are believed to have died. The deadly strike, which gave no chance for refugees to flee, left families in mourning. The Tigrayan rebel accused the government of carrying out the drone attack. Our people are also paying the price at the war front, and people paying this price should not be alarmed and terrorized by these attacks and should finish their struggle with their heads held high, Tikley Gebre Dehim, the province ambassador, said.
UN chief condemns appalling attacks in Nigeria. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the appalling attacks perpetrated over the weekend in Nigeria's Zamfara state, in which scores of civilians were killed. According to news agencies, an estimated 200 people were killed, while 10,000 displaced in attacks by armed bandits following military air raids on their hideouts last week. In a statement, Guterres urged Nigerian authorities to spare no effort in bringing those responsible for these heinous crimes to justice. At the same time, the UN chief also reaffirmed the solidarity and support of the United Nations to the government and people of Nigeria in their fight against terrorism, violent extremism, and organized crime. Now, in October, the UN World Food Programme warned that displaced families in this part of the country were knocking on the door of starvation. Bandits hoping to make a quick cash by forcing the families and authorities to pay ransom money for their hostages often target institutions just out of reach of state control and usually in rural areas.
Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa fires State Security Minister. Now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has fired his State Security Minister Owen Kube. Kube was considered a Mnangagwa loyalist, was in charge of Zimbabwe's Central Intelligence Organization. In a statement, Mnangagwa said Kube had been removed from the office with immediate effect for conduct inappropriate for a minister of government. Now, Kube was appointed State Security Minister in September 2018, but has recently been associated with ZANU-PF factional wars as the country moves towards the 2023 elections.
All right. China eyes East Africa's rail network expansion. China is proposing a grand infrastructure plan for the Horn of Africa that would involve expanding the two major railroads and developing ports on the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. Under the proposals announced during last week's visit by China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, the Mombasa-Nairobi Railway in Kenya will be extended to Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and eventually to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Meanwhile, the line linking the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa with Djibouti would be extended to Eritrea, but both plans will only happen in due course. China is making inroads into the Horn of Africa and has already invested heavily in Djibouti, which is home to its first overseas military base. Now, Seifuddin Adem, a professor of global studies at Doshisha University in Kyoto, Japan, said a proposed rail link between Addis Ababa and Assab, a port in Eritrea, may be the winning card in China's new diplomatic strategy in the Horn.
Our next story is from South Africa. Lawyers of King Misuzulu Kazwelithini and those of the first Zulu queen Sibongile Winifred Zulu and her daughter Princess Tandoyenkosi Zulu and Tombiso Zutu Zulu Duma will square up in the Pietermaritzburg High Court to determine if the will of the late Goodwill Zwelithini Kabeku Zulu is an authentic document and if Winifred is entitled to half of the deceased husband's lucrative estate. Should the court find that Kabeku Zulu's signature was forged in parts of the will as alleged by the princess, there will be implications for the disputed rule of Misu Zulu, who is yet to undergo an official coronation as the result of the court action. Misu Zulu's mother, Queen Manfobi Dlamini Zulu, who was the third wife of Kabeku Zulu, declared her son as the chosen heir in her will. She died on the 29th of April last year, a month after the death of Kabeku Zulu. Manfobi was appointed regent following the death of her husband, but the princes have claimed that Manfobi did not have the necessary standing to be declared such or to bequeath her son to the title of the king of the Zulu nation, as he was not mentioned as such in Kabeku Zulu's will.
In our next story, Seychelles begins contactless screening. A brand new biometric corridor for traveler health screening has been installed at Seychelles International Airport, making the country only the second in the world after the UAE to use walk-through biometrics. The biocorridor identifies the individual traveler using biometric facial recognition technology and checks their temperature with a thermal camera. Fully integrated with the Seychelles Islands Travel Authorization System, the corridor validates whether the traveler has submitted the required required health documentation and has been authorized for travel by Seychelles authorities. With tourism levels soaring almost to 2019 levels, it is more vital than ever that we make use of technology and that we implement
open in late October. A total of 545,000 were females and 461,000 were males. The majority of these vaccines were in the Gauteng area, 213,000, followed by Limpopo with 115,000. In KwaZulu-Natal, just over 100,000 teenagers were vaccinated. The country has recorded a 14% positivity rate. The death toll since the start of the pandemic is 92,000.
All right, to the last of our top stories, Mozambique proclaims new Maputo National Park. Mozambique's Council of Ministers has issued a decree to formally merge the terrestrial and marine ecosystems of Maputo Special Reserve and Porta do Ouro Partial Marine Reserve into one conservation area, the new Maputo National Park. The proclamation of the 1,700 square kilometers park follows 2 decades of intensive development and restoration activities led by the country's National Administration for Conservation Areas and Peace Parks Foundation. The decree also increases the legal protection of this conservation space and elevates its status to Category 2 under the International Union for Conservation of Nature's classification of protected areas. In 2009, Peace Parks played an instrumental role in the declaration of Ponta do Ouro as a marine reserve, thereby establishing Africa's first marine transfrontier conservation area, linking up with South Africa's Isimangaliso Wetland Park, a World Heritage Site. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now we're going to be sticking with Mozambique after the break. SADC heads are currently meeting in Malawi and they're talking about the extremist developments in Mozambique. So we have an expert here with us, Dr. Richard Obina Oroanya from the University of Namibia, and he's going to be, breaking it down for us. You'll be chatting with Aina. See you after the break.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and thank you very much for joining us. The extraordinary summit of the heads of state and government of the Southern African Development Community meets in Malawi today to review violent extremist developments in Mozambique. Now today, Dr. Richard Obina Oroanya from the University of Namibia joins us to discuss the issue. Good morning, Doctor, and welcome to Africa Good Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, Doctor, could you please describe the insurgency in Cabo Delgado right now?
First and foremost, we have to, there's so many ways in which we can describe the company that is happening there. The insurgency can be seen when, first and foremost, as a failure of leadership in the African continent. It has been a long time that the region has been neglected, both by present and previous government. Despite its richness in terms of natural resources, the region remains largely undeveloped.
Yeah.
And of course, they have high rate of unemployment, they have high rate of illiteracy, have high rate of all sort of social malicious. And you can see that the conflict is a combination of many years of neglect, and which has pushed the youth of the area to find comfort, solution, and motivation in religion, extreme violence. You can also see the conflict, from the perspective of regional collective security, which of course SADC has, is deeply involved. That it's impossible for one country within the region to actually, fight against insurgency and to win against violent extremism. And so the collective effort of our countries is necessary. So it's a test of collective responsibility in terms of security provision for the people in the region. Because the security of one country is the security of others.
Yes.
And the insecurity in one country will mean insecurity in other countries. And so SADC coming together is to show solidarity, is to, to show commitment in terms of making sure that the lives and property of people that live within the region are protected.
I wonder if there is something else that could be done apart from just commitment and standing in solidarity. For instance, is there something that Namibia in her own capacity can do in that regard to help Mozambique and to ensure that SADC has security?
I think Namibia has already committed funds. Deploying forces, in fact, entails a lot of logistics, and which probably the country was not prepared at the time of the call. But having provided financial support to the region, it has made a commitment and should consign, toward that. And of course, like military intervention is only maybe a part of the solution, because the problem happening, there is a structural problem that has to be corrected over time. You do not just force the people to accept the governance. There must be improvement in terms of the quality of life of the people.
Yes.
There must be improvement in terms of infrastructure. There must be improvement in terms of job creation in the region. That will, of course, dissuade the citizens from engaging in violence activities. So that is very critical.
All right. How important is air support to the SADC mission in Mozambique?
Well, air support provides an overwhelming advantage.
Yeah.
It tilts the balance of power in favor of SADC forces. Through air support, SADC forces will be able to conduct reconnaissance missions. They will be able to determine the strength of the insurgency. They will be able to determine the types of weapons that they are using. And of course, it provides massive advantage in the sense that the insurgents have no air defense system. And they have no access to bombers, to jet fighters, to helicopters, gunboats. So it is possible. So it is a good advantage to them.
Yes.
And through it, you got intelligence that you can use to defeat insurgents. It's very critical.
All right. Now, why is it so difficult for us to get quality military intelligence in Mozambique?
Well, first and foremost, you have to understand the fact that this is an insurgent group, motivated by religion and other things. And recruitment into the organization has been nightly together. It's a tight group, and the recruitment has been based on recommendations and so on. So penetrating into such a group is difficult. Again, the terrain might be a problem. Poor coordination between the agencies and even the forces might also be a problem. Remember, Rwanda is also, the Rwanda forces are also there, SADC forces are also there. So you can have a kind of mistrust between the forces that are involved in the conflict. And that can cause a very serious problem. And of course, you need expertise in terms of intelligence analysis.
Yeah.
And if you have a situation in which you have, you lack expertise in terms of imagery interpretations, for instance, or understanding the signatures and codes of insurgents, then it becomes a problem for you to gather information. Then because, of course, insurgents have striking fear into the population, so having a kind of human intelligence penetration in the organization will be difficult because the population will fear reprisal attacks. And so the forces then need to build confidence into the community members in order for them to help in gathering information. And I think also in terms of I don't know, the military and equipment that are being used to gather technical intelligence from the people, if it is lacking, then it becomes a problem for the SADC forces to gather quality intelligence. There might be so many other factors also that play here, which we may not know because we are not in the theater of the conflict.
Yeah. All right, Doctor, you spoke about fear, and I read somewhere that a lot of other southern Africa, SADC countries are scared now that now there's an insurgency in Mozambique and there's possibility that this insurgency could travel to other countries. What do you think we can do to just sort of instill calmness amongst our leaders and amongst our people?
Well, I think one of the things that I felt mentioned is that the insurgence that is happening in Mozambique is also a consequence of globalization. Now we are having, free movement of people, or massive movement of people, from one region to another, and we are also trying to open up our borders also. That has some implications, security implications also for the regions, And so there are a number of things we can do. We can engage in tightening security within our borders. We can also, ensure that we coordinate our activities. Coordination is very important. Cooperation, sharing of information will be of value to countries within the SADC region in order to curtail the movement and activities of the insurgent groups.
All right, Doctor, thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. This was a very interesting conversation. I had so much fun. All right, this has been Dr. Richard Obina Oreanya from the University of Namibia, who was talking about the insurgency in Mozambique. We'll be right back after the break. I enjoyed.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. We certainly hope you benefited from the previous conversation, as we all did. Now, Africa Good Morning does pride itself on being your reliable source for decentralized African news. So let's take a trip to Zambia and have a chat with Mr. Mike Sichula. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
It's a very good morning to all our viewers on Africa Good Morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Always good to have you here, Mike. Now, we understand that health authorities have halted mass COVID-19 testing due to a global shortage in testing kits. Could you please tell us about this?
Yes, the Ministry of Health in Zambia on Monday this week announced that they are no longer going to be conducting mass vaccination of COVID because they have run out of testing kits due to the shortage on the global market. So, like I did report on Monday this week, to say there are over 26,000 people who have got the virus and they're under home management. This is one of the situations that has caused the Minister of Health to say now we're going to restrict testing of persons who look to have severe symptoms and not to be testing anybody else who comes for mass testing. Because what the Minister of Health had done was that they wanted to have more people tested so that to ascertain how widespread the virus is. But due to the shortage of testing kits, this has been put on hold.
All right.
All right, in some political news, stakeholders are calling for immediate electoral reform after a parliamentary election was called off 10 days before the poll day following the resignation of one of the participating candidates. Please tell us more.
Yes. Okay. According to the Zambian electoral, the rules that are governing elections in Zambia, whenever there's an election has been called and one of the participating candidates withdraws and resigns from the sponsoring party, the electoral body that governs the elections, they have to cancel the elections and call for fresh nominations. So in this particular case, the case in point is the Kabata by-election, which is one of the 8 constituencies in the capital city, Lusaka. The immediate member of parliament passed away on the 18th of November 2021. And 90 days, it is required by law in Zambia that 90 days after the election must be called. So the elections were supposed to be held on the 20th of January 2022, but 10 days before that could take place, one of the party candidates, Mr. Francis Livanda, just decided to resign and pull off. And this has happened even when the ballot papers for the elections had come into the country yesterday. We can now listen to the video and hear the candidate who pulled out give out his reasons why he pulled out from the race.
Yes, I can confirm that I've withdrawn. I'm just from dropping my resignation letter to withdraw from the race.
Is there any reason that you have cited?
Yes, I've cited a number of reasons. There are many. I widely consulted with my family and I decided that I withdraw.
Okay, so what is your word to your supporters in Kabata?
I want to thank, first of all, the party president, Dr. Xavier Chishima, for having adopted me to run in the race. I want to thank the party leadership. Want to thank my supporters in Kabata, and not the least, I want to thank my family for the support they've given me.
All right, what an interesting development, a nice shirt too. Now, Mike, I'd like you to go briefly into your next 2 stories. The first one about President Hakainde Hichilema, who's taken office, he took it out for 4 months. He's been there for 4 months, but he has not yet moved into the State House. Could you talk about that? And could you also talk about the cabinet minister that caused a public stunt when he cycled into the offices of the Anti-Corruption Commission? As briefly as possible, Mike.
Yes, like you have said, President Hakainde Hichilema, since he got into office on the 24th of August 2021, he has not moved into State House. And in between this period, the president has been commuting from his residential house, called the Community House, to State House on a daily basis. And there you are in the picture there. That is at one of his at his residence conducting a meeting which could have been held at the State House. And the reasons are that the State House, the government is renovating the State House so that before Mr. Hakainde Hichilema could move in. But one of the other reasons is that one of the vehicles in his entourage before Christmas was involved in a road traffic accident. So there are all these issues to say probably the president has decided not to be moving into State House so that to avoid some of these things that may happen because of the rash intolerance that the president has to use when going to State House. Then lastly, one of the former cabinet ministers in Zambia, was actually yesterday questioned by the Anti-Corruption Commission over how he acquired this wealth while he was in government. So what he did is that when he was summoned, he cycled to the Anti-Corruption Commission, and later in the day, he was actually arrested, and the charge was not made public to the members of the party.
All right, maybe he was just trying to showcase his resolutions of, living a healthier life. You never know. But thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news from Zambia.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
All right, cheers. This is still Africa Good Morning. Let's have a look at the weather.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Ari Houghad has prepared for us a report on the happenings in South Africa, and here is it.
Yes, a very good morning from Cape Town in South Africa. It's time to talk South African news. The year just started. All the best for everyone for 2022. But already lots of news in South Africa. Let's talk about that and first start with COVID-19 update. Always in the news in South Africa, and news from the last 24 hours is that there's been 2,409 new cases reported in South Africa. That's a lot lower than mid-December. It was up at 8,500. But the 2,400 still represents 14% positive rate. And but also at least there was some good vaccination administered the past 24 hours. A total of 83,842 people got vaccinated the last 24 hours. The government want the vaccination rate to be 70%. At the moment it is 59%. It's made up of 32% of the country that's got one vaccination, and then 27.2% that's fully vaccinated, and that represents 16 million people. News from Cape Town, from Parliament, is that there was a fire at Parliament. I think many people will know about that. Arson is expected there. There big damage in the historic Parliament buildings in Cape Town. That was a few days ago, and the person that was caught and that was charged with the arson is Mr. Zandile Mafi. He was in court yesterday applying for bail. That wasn't addressed because he was sent for 30 days observation at Valkenburg Psychiatric Hospital. That was because a district surgeon, he saw Mr. Mafi and he said he diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. And so unfortunately the damage in that Parliament building is massive. It is calculated to, the structural damage is calculated to be as high as 1 billion South African rand. So we will follow that to see what will happen with Mr. Zandile Mafi. There's also some schools of thought in South Africa that say that he was just taken from the street. He's a person that lives on the street, and they made the guilty part, and there's other people that was involved. But the court will decide on that. So let's move on to some education news. It's back to school for many learners today already. In Gauteng, the Free State Province, the Northern Province, and also Limpopo, they go back to school today. The coastal regions go back to school next week. So news from the Department of Education, from the Minister Angie Motshekga, is that COVID protocols are in place at all the schools. So we hope that is the case. It was not good. The protocols were not good at all at some schools in the rural areas in 2021. So hopefully they looked after those schools in the right way, the Ministry of Education. Also from the Ministry of Education, the matric, the grade 12 results will be made known on the 20th of January, not in all the media, but at the Education Department and also at schools. The previous class, the 2020 class, their pass rate was 76.2, so hopefully the class of 2021 will have a higher passing rate than 76.2%. But it was a challenging year, 2021, so indications it is at the moment that it might be lower than 76%. 900,000 learners wrote matric this year. On to some news from agricultural news. In the northern Limpopo, there was lots of rain in December, and that had a massive impact on the tomato industry. And also the heavy rains in December cost the tomato industry in South Africa almost 100 million South African rand. So normally the farmers are quite happy to have rain, but in the tomato region it wasn't good in December. So markets received up to 700 tons fewer tomatoes, that is daily. So a big loss in the tomato industry for December. The price also rose from 7 rand a kilogram to 12 rand a kilogram. There were also some hail damage, unfortunately, in that region, in the northern region. But indication at the moment is that it's closer to normal, and the markets are getting the volumes that they need to get. On to some feel-good news that we normally end with. It is a new Guinness World of Record that was set by two persons from Durban in the KwaZulu-Natal. And they paddle skiers. The new Guinness Book of Records was set, a record was set for the longest distance paddled in a double surf ski in 24 hours. And the two people that accomplished that, that's Quinton Rutherford and Brett Hydarius. And well done to them. In 24 hours, they paddled all the way from St. Lucia to Durban. That is 219 kilometers in 24 hours. That's a new Guinness World Record. And also Quinton Rutherford is also the holder of the individual record. They made it possible. There was a northeasterly wind behind them, and also the ocean current was in the right direction. And also that makes it a real feel-good story is that it was also an opportunity to raise some money for a very good cause for a young girl called Farron Grace that suffers from leukemia. So that was also a part of what they did. That is Quinton Rutherford and Brett Hydarius, a new Guinness World Record, the longest distance paddled in a double surf ski. So well done to them. So that's the South African news. I hope you have a great day, and we talk again next week, Wednesday, for more South African news. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Many thanks to Irie for compiling that extensive report from South Africa. This is still Africa. Good morning, and it's time for your economic news stories. In your first story, Eskom's intentions might scupper power supply in the country this year. While Eskom seems to have put its house in order over the past month with no load shedding, there is uncertainty about its staying power over the next year. Eskom over the festive season brought on stream Unit 4 of the Kusile power plant, which at full operational capacity is expected to add 800 megawatts, but which is not expected at least for the next 6 months as the unit is commissioned gradually. Meanwhile, concerns have been raised about the scheduled maintenance of the Koeberg nuclear plant's generators, which will have to be shut down over the 10 months maintenance period, talking about 900 megawatts off the grid with each generator shut down. Now, nuclear physicist Dr. Calvin Kem said the Koeberg reactors, which were in service for over 40 years, needed to have its steam generators replaced, which he said was a complicated process.
Massive electricity price hike on the cards for South Africa. South Africa faces a hefty electricity price hike in April despite ongoing load shedding and energy production concerns surrounding Eskom. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa has invited stakeholders to comment until Friday on Eskom's proposed tariff increase for the country. Eskom Chief Financial Officer Khalib Kasim has confirmed that the state-owned power utility has applied for an electricity price increase of 20.5% for its 2023 financial year, set to take effect from the 1st of April 2022. However, analysts have raised concerns as to what increases will actually be pushed through, with NERSA tables showing hikes of as much as 40% depending on how the outstanding debts are clawed back.
All right, in our next story, Wall Street tumbles on Monday as tech stocks extend slide. Wall Street's main indexes tumbled on Monday as heavyweight technology stocks dropped on expectations of a high interest rate environment, which pushed U.S. Treasury yields to fresh two-year highs and supported banks. Mega cap companies including Apple Inc., Amazon.com Inc., Microsoft Corp., Meta Platforms Inc., and Tesla Inc. fell between 2.1% and 4.4% in early trading. Markets are now expecting a greater than 70% chance of an interest rate rise to 0.25% in March and at least 2 more hikes by year end. All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Next up, economic indicators.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and here is the sport news. Yesterday was the third day of AFCON Championships in Cameroon. 3 matches were played and only one goal was scored. Algeria and Sierra Leone drew without troubling the scorers. Nigeria beat Egypt with 1-0, and Sudan and Guinea-Bissau draw without scoring.
All right, in our next story, Al Attiyah closes in on Dakar crown after De Villiers' stage win. South African Janelle De Villiers won the Dakar Rally 9th stage on Tuesday as Nasser Al Attiyah moved closer to clinching his 4th title. The 51-year-old Qatari had seen Sebastian Loeb nibble away at his extensive lead over the past couple of days. But with Friday's finish in Riyadh looming, France's serial World Rally champion has a 39-minute and 5 seconds deficit to make up on Al Attiyah. De Villiers nipped home 9 seconds clear on the day from his fellow South African Henk Latergan to take his total stage wins in Dakar to 18. In the bike category, Austrian Matthias Wagner deposed the British 2017 champion Sam Sunderland as overall leader after a stage won by Jose Cornejo Florimo.
In our next story, Proteas and India gear up for the biggest test match in years. To all and sundry, the Proteas have looked in increasing turmoil the past couple of years, indeed taking into account the length of time since South Africa last won a significant test match, let alone their well-documented off-field problems. The rainbow seemed far off in the horizon. But it's 2022, a year of new beginnings and fresh start where they miraculously find themselves in an uncharted waters of being unbeaten of the year thus far after a memorable victory over the world #1 test side India last week at the Wanderers. It's been an engrossing series that has been set rather up for the perfect ending. India will have the talismanic leader Virat Kohli back at the helm to drive them towards victory and potentially historic victory. But the Proteas have an even greater source of motivation.
Now, in the last of our top stories, we are in boxing as Mayweather to fight next month in Dubai. Floyd Mayweather will take part in an exhibition fight on 20 February on a helipad atop the Burj Al Hotel in Dubai against an as-yet unnamed opponent, Boxing Junkie reported on Tuesday. The Hall of Fame boxer, who will turn 45 4 days after the fight, has been targeting YouTuber Rashad Money Kicks Belhassa as his opponent, according to media reports. Mayweather retired in 2015 but returned to defeat Conor McGregor in 2017 and improve his professional record to 50-0. It's going to be a very special crowd, not too many people, Mayweather was quoted as saying. So if you get the chance to come here, you must know you're very special for this event. Interesting news from, possibly one of the best technical boxers of all time. This is still Africa Good Morning. After the break, your headlines. Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning, as we have been broadcasting live from 7 a.m., which we do every single weekday, bringing you news from the African continent and beyond. Now, if you perhaps missed our top stories at the top of the hour, or if you need a recap, worry not, here are some of the highlights. Mali's junta leader says open to dialogue after sanctions. Massive electricity price hike on the cards for South Africa. Wall Street tumbles on Monday as tech stocks extend slide. SAA commits to addressing shameful past. Eskom's intentions might scupper power supply in the country this year. And in sport, Proteas and India gear up for biggest test match in years. Those have been our stories.
We thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can send them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Africa Good Morning. Please do remember that this show rebroadcasts again at 8:30 to 9:30 on our website, which is called One Up 2. And on that very same website, you can find all of our other shows right here at NMH. And on that note, we encourage you to get vaccinated, wear your mask, and avoid unnecessary public gatherings. We're wishing you a very winning and wholesome Wednesday.
Stay safe. Swera Jaganaka.